If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 10 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that 2 dirty bombs, or possibly a suitcase nuke, will explode in Manhattan, New York City on March 22nd, 2025. There will be a large-scale evacuation from Manhattan Island. Martial law will be declared in the U.S. I am predicting that on April 26th, 2025, Israel will bomb, possibly with nuclear bombs, Iran's nuclear and energy weapons facilities. It is also possible that the U.S. will also bomb Iran alongside Israel on April 26th. I am also predicting that a nuclear bomb will be detonated on June 8th, 2025. It is possible that April 26th, 2025 is a step in the trail of signs that is leading to the date that Israel will bomb Iran on June 8th. It is also possible that June 8th is also a step in the trail of signs leading to another date in the future on which Israel will bomb Iran and a date on which a nuclear bomb will be detonated. If that is the case, we can expect clear and relevant prophetic signs to occur on April 26th and June 8th. It is predicted that on June 9th, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the 5th trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens. The demons pretending to be aliens will claim to be here to help us with our nuclear weapons, and it is possible that June 9th will be the day Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. At some point, there will be a massive Mary apparition that will deceive the masses, because all Mary apparitions in history have been demons pretending to be Mary. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist, and 5G frequencies. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. If June 9th is not the date for these events, there will be a relevant prophetic sign or prophetic signs, which will make June 9th a step in the trail of signs leading to the date of the symbolic beginning of these things. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. It is predicted that on August 6th, 2025, the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years will finally break free and crash over Niagara Falls. The reason for this is that Niagara Falls is Noah's flood symbolism, and the barge was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls, symbolic of Noah's Ark. Niagara in the native language means straight, narrow way, and Niagara's Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the CN Tower in downtown Toronto, because Toronto and its tower are symbolic of the Tower of Babel. In a game of horseshoes, the object is to aim the horseshoe and throw it at the metal stick, which is why the Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the metal stick that is the CN Tower. God is communicating that as testament for those who will live in the 1,000 years of Christ's reign on earth, the geography of North America will, as a result of a massive earthquake, be divided by a body of water from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi Delta. This destruction will be judgment on America and Canada for attempting to divide God's land, Israel. When this happens, the water in the Great Lakes will spill out over southern Ontario and Toronto. I am predicting that a solar flare will erupt on the surface of the sun and send a coronal mass ejection that will hit Earth on August 13th, 2025, which will knock out America's power grid and will lead to food shortages. The hit of the coronal mass ejection, predicted for August 13th, that will knock out the power grid will also knock many planes out of the sky. I am predicting that on August 30th in the North America time zones and on August 31st in the Asia time zones, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth in the Indian Ocean. The greatest seismic effect of this will be felt on the other side of the globe, which is North America, and this will trigger an eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the east coast. The asteroid will also trigger a mega landslide on Hawaii Island that will trigger a mega tsunami that will hit the west coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. Michelle Obama will, quote unquote, win the election over J.D. Vance on November 7th, 2028, and will become the president on January 20th, 2029. She will stack the Supreme Court, and she will appoint Barack Obama as her vice president, and then she will step down, making Barack Obama the 50th president. This is speculation, but it could be that there will be a movement to make Trump the president for a third term, arguing that he is eligible because he hasn't served 2 consecutive terms. And if so, this will backfire, as it will lead the way for Barack Obama to serve a third term that isn't consecutive. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be at the end of 2031. Unless there are multiple rapture events, the resurrection rapture event will not occur before Pentecost on June 4th, 2028. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived, and more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Make a note right now of these alternative platforms that you can find me on in case you can't find me later. All right, welcome. This video is about this prediction that 2 dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan in New York City, and there will be a large-scale evacuation from Manhattan Island on March 22nd, 2025. All right, as we can see, this email was composed on March 19th, which is today. This prediction that dirty bombs will explode in New York City and the knowledge that God has been revealing that this will happen has been known since the middle of 2019. And along the way, there have been these trails of signs, and God has been telling these stories through these connections and signs, the big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. And one of the stories and connections that God is using is the Deepwater Horizon oil rig explosion on the Gulf of America, at that time, of course, named the Gulf of Mexico. And if you will recall, that was a big deal in 2010. And I'll explain this. Also, Mark Wahlberg, the name itself, Mark Wahlberg, first of all, is prophetic because Mark hints at the mark of the Antichrist described in Bible prophecy. And one of the main themes God is using in his true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is walls of security collapsing in God's judgment on America. This parallel with the book of Joshua in the Bible. In fact, the key to understanding the book of Revelation is through the book of Joshua in general. And so Wahlberg hints at that too. That's why in 2016, a year that hints at 216, right? You take away the 0 out of 2016, you get 216, and 216 is the 6 times 6 is equal to 6 times 6 times 6, the number associated with the Antichrist in Bible prophecy, as well as the mark of the Antichrist. Also, the Antichrist was born on the 216th day of the calendar year. And that Antichrist that was born on that day is the 44th president. And as I'll get to in a second here, we have a 444 weeks and 4 days connection. That's 4 fours, as in 44th president. And so Mark Wahlberg starred in these 2 movies in 2016 in the same year, blockbuster movies that involved these prophetic historic explosions. One of them being the Deepwater Horizon movie, and the other being Patriots Day, about the explosion at the finish line of the marathon in Boston. Extremely prophetic sign, and it communicates what I'm describing here in this video, or rather this prediction. And what I mean is that, among many other things, God used the Patriots Day Boston Marathon bombing to reveal this prediction of the coming collapse of the walls of security of America with these dirty bomb explosions in New York City. The follow-up to the warning of judgment on 9/11, which actually involved pointing to, with God, Wall Street, as I have explained many times in other videos. So what I'm going to do is, this is what this you're looking at here is just notes. I'm just going to riff. I'm running out of time. We are now just 3 days before the prediction. And by the way, the post date of the video proves this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this email. So if you are skeptical for some reason, I'll forward it to you. but I fail to see how you possibly could be confused or skeptical given the post date of the video. All right, because obviously I'm not able to manipulate the post date of the video. If you think so, I don't know what to tell you, except, well, I'll forward this email to you. But also, I have the video up on multiple different platforms, and if for some reason you think I'm an insider at YouTube, well, this video is posted on many more channels other than YouTube. Okay. So, what I've written here is that so God uses the dates of the release of movies for the prophetic messages he wishes to communicate, and he uses a lot of movies for prophetic reason, for prophetic purposes. And the movie Deepwater Horizon was released on September 13th, 2016. So the movie, again, is about the Deepwater explosion. And so the movie symbolizes that. And therefore, like I'm saying, the release date is the date we can work with in terms of connecting God's signs. And this is how his true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, because none of God's prophetic signs can be fully or properly understood without their context and connections to the other prophetic signs. And that is how he uses these signs to communicate things. And that is only being explained on this channel. And so the release date of the movie, again, is actually for the purpose of symbolizing the Deepwater Horizon explosion date. That date God has also used as well, as I'll explain. Well, anyway, the date we are talking about regarding the predicted explosions and evacuation, because the Deepwater Horizon explosion incident also involved an evacuation, as did the Boston Marathon bombing. And the predicted explosions and evacuation from Manhattan Island. Well, let me see. The explosion and the evacuation aspect of the Deepwater Horizon rig would have also been due to toxicity, because that's the reason why there will be an evacuation from Manhattan Island. That is what a dirty bomb is. Dirty bombs are not used for, well, actually, has there ever been a dirty bomb explosion? But in theory, dirty bombs are for terrorism. They're for the psychological impact. They're for the contaminating of the area, not for actual destruction. And so there was an evacuation due to the same theme, same reason. The toxicity, I believe, from the oil burning, right? Now, anyway, the movie was released exactly 444 weeks and 4 days before the predicted explosions and evacuation from Manhattan Island. Also, the oil rig is in the middle of water, and so is Manhattan Island. I mean, when the evacuation from Manhattan Island takes place, they'll be leaving the island over water, or if they use a tunnel under the water. Likewise was the case with the Deepwater Horizon explosion and evacuation. They evacuated over water. All right, and as I mentioned, the 444 weeks and 4 days is 4 fours, which hints at the 44th president, who is the Antichrist, who will enforce the mark of the Antichrist, hence Mark Wahlberg. Now, the Deepwater Horizon explosion itself on April 20th, 2010 was exactly the 2 times third semi-prime number of months, which is 15 months, after the inauguration of the 44th president, who wore 23 in high school. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And if we think about it, one simple way in which he would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 23 and 44. And I know this because I have been studying his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections from morning until night for more than full-time hours for more than 7 years. And again, the 44th president was the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. Okay, and so that's why we have this embedded in the 15 months, 2 times 3, which is 23. Again, 15 is the 2 times third semi-prime number. And that is paired, this 23 is paired with the inauguration of the 44th president. On January 20th, 2009, exactly the 2 times third semi-prime number of months before the Deepwater Horizon explosion. And then the movie, in turn, connects with exactly 444 weeks and 4 days to the predicted explosions in New York City. All right, now, and so this 2 times third semi-prime number of months pairs also with the 444 weeks and 4 days, as well as pairing with the inauguration of the 44th president. All right. And so one of the big things in the 44th president's presidency early on was the Deepwater Horizon crisis. It was a crisis, too, because of the oil that was washed up on the shore of the Gulf of America. Now, speaking of the Gulf of America, the reason why it is named the Gulf of America is because America and Mexico both have the same number of coastline miles in the Gulf. Each of these two nations have 1,700 miles of coastline in the Gulf. And so there really is no reason necessarily why it must be named the Gulf of Mexico, because the U.S. has an equal amount of coastline. But it is 2 times 1,700 miles of coastline. This is designed by God because it points to the 2 planes that struck the 2 towers 17 minutes apart on 9/11. The reason why the 2 planes struck the 2 towers 17 minutes apart is not only that the flood judgment in the Bible began on the date 2/17, and that would be relevant too with the Deepwater Horizon incident because it was on the ocean. But the 2 planes striking the 2 towers 17 minutes apart was also for the purpose of pointing to the 2 space shuttle disasters that were exactly 17 years apart. I say exactly because the 2 shuttle disasters are commemorated on the same day every year. They were almost exactly 17 years apart. The reason for the 2 space shuttle disasters 17 years apart is that God was pointing to the space mission to the moon and Apollo 17, which was the last time that an American stepped foot on the moon. The last time an American departed the moon was symbolic of America's departure from Christ, because the moon is a giant rock, and in the Bible, rock is symbolism for Jesus. And the sun symbolizes God the Father, and the sun's light is too bright for us to gaze at, but we can gaze at the sun's light reflected off of the moon. And this is why in the Bible, watching for the timing of the moon is symbolism for watching for the timing of the Lord's return through prophetic signs, including prophetic moon signs. Well, anyway, the release of the movie Deepwater Horizon was exactly 2 times 17 months before the Manhattan blackout. On July 13th, 2019, and that prophetic sign was one part of it. It was about many things. It was one of the most important signs in the last years. But it was about, and it included and embedded many things in it. But one of the things that it alluded to, or rather revealed, was, and that was actually when it was first discovered, this revelation, that there would be these dirty bomb explosions in Manhattan, or possibly a suitcase nuke, or something to that effect. All right, now Manhattan is the location of the 9/11 events, when two planes struck the two towers 17 minutes apart, which is why it is astounding that the Deepwater Horizon movie was released exactly 2 times 17 months before the Manhattan blackout. Now again, the Deepwater Horizon movie is about the Deepwater Horizon incident on the Gulf of America, which has 2 nations that have 1,700 miles each on the Gulf Coast. So that's why connecting 2 times 17 is relevant from the release of the movie Deepwater Horizon. But not only that, it connects to this prophetic sign in Manhattan, which also pointed to 9/11 in itself. And on 9/11 in Manhattan, it was 2 planes that struck the 2 towers 17 minutes apart. So that's definitely a solid connection. And furthermore, also, again, the Deepwater Horizon incident occurred on the ocean, and that would be also Noah's flood symbolism. Also, on the day of the Manhattan blackout, speaking of which, I just realized this, and this always happens, is when I'm reading the information, I always realize something really profound that I hadn't before, or if I had before, I forgot, but I don't think so. But this connection is amazing because on the day of the Manhattan blackout was the prophetic Hurricane Barry that hit the Gulf Coast. And again, the Deepwater Horizon incident is about the oil spill onto the Gulf Coast. Whoa. Well, that's amazing. Now, the Hurricane Barry was a prophetic sign that pointed to Barack Obama, who changed his name from Barry to Barack after he became an adult. I mean, who does that, right? Who changes their name from a good American name to something very foreign sounding? Well, someone who doesn't love America. That's obvious. Of course, that is Barack Obama. He is a communist, and that's another story, and that's a fact. All right? He was a communist. And once a communist, always a communist. But he was a communist. Literally, he was he was a member of the May 19th Communist Organization in 1983 when that organization bombed the Capitol building, which is one reason why God is using Obama to hint at Obama, as I explained many times in other videos. Now, well, I'll just say it again. The Beirut bombings, the Beirut bombings hinted at Barack. Again, Hurricane Barry also hinted at Barack. But the Beirut bombings hint at Barack Obama, right? And they occurred exactly 444 months, as in the 44th president, after the first UN session in New York City. Again, we are talking about bombs, as in Obama in New York City, this being the symbolic beginning of the UN in New York City. And the 44th Antichrist, President Antichrist, will soon lead the world and the UN body in the end times. But also, 21,600 minutes, which is 15 days, after the Barack Beirut bombings, was the Capitol building bombing by the May 19th Communist Organization. Now, 21,600 minutes hints at 216, which is 6 times 6 times 6. But also, Barack Obama was born on the 216th day of the calendar year. And most importantly, the name Barack is equal to 216 in English gematria. And so from the Barak, as in Barack bombings, you have the number of minutes that hint at Barack, the word or name Barack, to the May 19th Communist Organization bombing of the Capitol building. And believe me, I know far better than you. I know way more. This is just one thing, one scratching of the surface. There's all kinds of confirmation for what I'm saying about how Obama was a member of the May 19th Communist Organization. But that's enough for now. Now, so Hurricane Barry, which was at the other end of the 2 times 17 months exactly from the Deepwater Horizon movie, which again was about the Gulf Coast. Hurricane Barry hit the Gulf Coast, and it was known for the blackouts that it caused in Louisiana. And that was the same day as the Manhattan blackout, this extremely prophetic event in Manhattan. And that's quite something. Also, Louisiana is the 6+6+6th state to join the Union, and Barack Obama is the Antichrist, whose number is symbolized, or who his number is 666 in Bible prophecy. Now, let's see. Also, the blackout in Louisiana was known for 153,000 customers without power. 153 is 9 times 17, and Barack Obama was president from 09 until 17. Now, let's see. The Manhattan blackout, well, I'll say this first, actually. The Manhattan blackout was exactly 923 months after the official beginning of the Manhattan Project. And God pairs 9 and 23 just as he pairs 23 and 44, as I explained. And I explained why. It's the simple way to provide a second witness. And these are the 3 numbers that are really focused on 9, 23, and 44. The basketball president who wore 23 in high school became the 44th president in 09. Now, that's why 923 is a pairing of 9 and 23 that confirms the signs and connections. And this is how it works. And the prediction being made will prove that this is how it works, that this is God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. The pairings of 9 and 23 and 44 are for far more than revealing the identity of the Antichrist. God uses, because that's like foundational, God uses these things as tools to develop his true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is why the Manhattan blackout was exactly 923 months after the Manhattan Project, which was, of course, about developing the first nuclear bomb, and that's what we are ultimately talking about, this nuclear weapon grade material in these dirty bombs, or possibly a suitcase nuke in Manhattan on March 22nd. So, long story short, well, I'll say it a little bit. One other way the Manhattan blackout, prophetic sign, pointed to 9/11. Well, actually, the Manhattan blackout, this is very interesting. The Manhattan blackout occurred during the twice annual event that's called Manhattan Henge. And in Genesis 1:14, God says that the lights in the sky are for prophetic signs. The 2 brightest lights in the sky are the sun and the moon. Well, Manhattan Henge, which only occurs twice a year, is when the sun sets perfectly in between the canyon walls of the skyscrapers of Manhattan. All right? And it's best observed from 42nd Avenue. And that's why initially in the Manhattan blackout, it was 42,000 customers that were without power. It was also exactly 110 minutes shy of an exact 42 years after the infamous New York City blackout in 1977. And 1977 was the year of Star Wars, and Harrison Ford starred in Star Wars, and his Star Wars career spanned 42 years. And to 2019. And the day of the Manhattan blackout was Harrison Ford's birthday. And he was 77, which is, again, the 42 years back to 1977, and the Manhattan, or New York City blackout. And it was 110 minutes shy exactly, and God pairs 9 and 110 to confirm the signs and connections, because the 110 stories that collapsed on 9/11 engendered a small earthquake and cracked the foundation of Federal Hall on Wall Street, where George Washington was inaugurated, and Wall Street was named after the 9-foot-high wall of security that the Dutch built to keep the British and the Indians out. Also, Trump, God's trumpet that he uses to trumpet his signs, on 9/11 famously called into Channel 9 TV news station and inadvertently trumpeted how his tower on Wall Street had become the tallest tower in Lower Manhattan. Well, Joshua died at the age of 110, and he marched around the walls of security of Jericho before they collapsed in God's judgment, and on and on. And so what I was saying, though, is that the Manhattan Henge occurred during the Manhattan Blackout. So that Manhattan Henge, the canyon walls of the Manhattan Henge event were black. There were no lights interfering with the amazing sign that was the Manhattan Henge that year. Now, during the Manhattan Henge and during the Manhattan Blackout, there was a very prophetic 4.0 magnitude earthquake in Manhattan, Montana, directly on top of the lava plume of Yellowstone located in the 44th state, on the 44th latitudinal line. And it is also the 110th longitudinal line, incidentally. And also the elevation is 9,203 feet, incidentally, of the caldera, which is another pairing of 9 and 23, which points to the Manhattan Project. Well, anyway, the Manhattan, Montana earthquake, which was an unusual, rare thing in this city or town, Manhattan, occurred exactly 9 months and 11 days after the swarm of earthquakes began there, which was making it a 9/11 sign. Also in the Manhattan, or rather the Manhattan Blackout was also known for the live impromptu street performances of two Broadway shows, Hades Town and also Come From Away. The story Come From Away is based on a true story about these airplanes that were on their way in from Europe that were grounded in this small remote town in northern Newfoundland in Canada. And the story is about the hospitality of the locals who took them into their homes and things like this because of the huge number of planes that got stranded there on 9/11 for a few days. And so that's a 9/11 story, and it was pointed to through the live impromptu performance of the crew of the cast of the Come From Away Broadway show on the Broadway street during the daylight during the Manhattan Blackout as the sun was setting. Okay, so in other words, Manhattan Blackout, the Manhattan Blackout pointed to 9/11. All right, now the Manhattan Blackout occurred 9 times 11 plus 9 times 11 plus 9 times 11 weeks before the predicted explosions in Manhattan and evacuation on March 22nd, 2025. Okay, that's amazing beyond words. God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. If it were simply 9 times 11 plus 9 times 11, it wouldn't be nearly as as high a level of confirmation as 9 times 11 plus 9 times 11 plus 9 times 11 because of this principle of repeating something 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. It's just the pattern that God uses. And for example, if it was 4 repetitions of 9 times 11, it wouldn't be as prophetic as 3 repetitions. Okay, so the Manhattan Blackout in Manhattan was exactly 9 times 11 plus 9 times 11 plus 9 times 11 weeks to the predicted follow-up judgment to the warning of judgment on 9/11, which will be these predicted dirty bombs and evacuation from Manhattan Island. And again, now I've connected the Deepwater Horizon incident through the movie starring Mark Wahlberg to the predicted events in Manhattan, the bombings, which is a parallel in a way to the Boston bombing. And speaking of 110, well, no, the Boston bombing was on the 101 anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic, which pointed to the 101 passengers on the Mayflower, which landed in Massachusetts and founded the Boston colony and all that. So that's why I just mentioned that. Okay, so, all right, now what can I add here now? I'll just add a few things here from this diagram that I made back in 2023. All right, because God was developing these trails of signs and they weren't finished. Like I said, this prediction has been known since 2019, and along the way, God has been developing the big picture of signs through connecting these dates involving clear, relevant signs to the prediction, and they don't necessarily end up being the date of the event, and instead end up being a date for prophetic signs that reveal more knowledge and reveal more stories, etc. It's amazing, and it's just so huge. It's just so massive how it's almost, I could say, infinite. This is so much that God is communicating, and it's been going on for years, and each of these dates spin off all kinds of other stories, and it just multiplies and multiplies. And so the number of videos on that note that I've been able to get up in time for this prediction don't cover a fraction of the information regarding the signs that God has been communicating regarding this prediction for these dirty bombs and their significance. It's more than just about dirty bombs. It means something, right? You have no idea until you actually watch the videos, actually. And so on that note, there are about 70 videos that led a trail of signs to February 24th and, well, really February 3rd in 2024. Because February 3rd, 2024 was a step to February 24th. That's explained in these other videos too. Well, it's explained in a couple of other videos, that connection. Well, anyway, you need to watch these other videos is my point, because if you don't, you will not have learned what God's intention was with this prediction. It would be one thing for God to tap someone on the shoulder and say, hey, tell the world that this is going to happen on such and such date, but what good would it be? It wouldn't, besides, prove again that the Lord, righteous Christian God of the Bible is the true God. There's already, though, an overwhelming amount of evidence for that. Don't get me wrong. I'm just making a point. This will be a tool for evangelism like none other, this prediction. But it's for telling these stories, and through these stories, God is communicating extremely important information and knowledge. Well, anyway, one such story, actually this diagram contains a few different stories. Actually, many different stories. What am I saying? But I actually, in the diagram, I wasn't only focused on the Mark Wahlberg connection and the Deepwater Horizon, but also the suitcase thief. But that's another story. Well, okay, so the suitcase thief was this DEI guy, young guy that Biden appointed to be the head of the nuclear waste department. I forget the exact title. And he ended up being this thief, a criminal, stealing women's luggages from airports to wear their clothing. Because he was this transgender guy, truthfully, he was a cross-dresser who wanted to show it off in public. It's just a sexual perversion, right? So anyway, he is the suitcase thief, and we're talking about a suitcase nuke possibly, and if not, the suitcase nuke symbolism or theme in the pattern of signs is for the purpose of pointing to this smuggled in nuclear weapons grade plutonium, which may involve smuggling through using suitcases. But the purpose of a suitcase nuke is to disguise it. And so that's maybe the symbolism, if it's not a suitcase nuke that we're going to have on March 22nd. Now, anyway, speaking of 9/11, the Sam Brinton suitcase thief, I forget why. This was a date in which he was either caught or the day that he stole the luggage, I forget. But anyway, it was exactly 11 years and 9 months after the Fukushima disaster, which is, of course, about nuclear material and an evacuation. just like the predicted dirty bombs. Anyway, that date was 10 months and 19 days, which is more 9/11 symbolism after the Deepwater event, which, as I explained earlier, connected to the inauguration of Obama. What I also forgot to mention, though, is that the Deepwater incident involved 11 deaths and 17 injured. That's because the name Obama is the 1117th word in the Hebrew concordance. This word is a capital B. It's a proper noun, but it has a meaning, and it means high place. Arguably, the Deepwater Horizon platform was a high place. I mean, these platforms are well above the surface level of the ocean. They are a high place. And so, anyway, regardless of that being relevant or not, I think it is. But the fact that the Horizon platform is a high place, you can debate that. But what isn't debatable is that God uses 11 and 17 together, paired together in the signs to point to Obama, because the word Obama is the 1117th word in the concordance. Now, the reason why that's relevant is because the name Barack Obama in Hebrew means lightning from heaven. Jesus in Luke 10:18 said that he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. Barak means lightning. That's a fact. You can look it up. Bama means high place, which in the Bible is a metaphor for heaven. As, for example, Lucifer fell from the high place. Also, the Jews, the high places is a euphemism in the Bible for the false religious worship that the Jews would conduct on the tops of mountains, the high places. And so, and the word O in Aramaic, the language Jesus would have spoken, is from. And so Barack Obama means lightning from heaven. And so either Jesus didn't know what he was saying when he said this, or he was revealing or he knew that there would be a famous president named Barack Obama and said this anyway, knowing that it would confuse us, or he revealed the identity of the Antichrist. Obviously, the latter option is the only one that makes any sense. And obviously, this contradicts the vast majority of evangelicals that claim that the identity of the Antichrist is unknowable, which is absurd, especially given that the identity of the first Antichrist of the two Antichrists is overwhelmingly revealed even in Old Testament prophecy. It was all along meant to be that the Antichrist would be a pope, and it is actually extremely shameful that the Protestant evangelical community has lost this knowledge over the last 70 years. There wouldn't have been a Reformation without this knowledge, and it is rooted, this false interpretation of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 that they use to claim that they can't know the identity of the Antichrist. That theology is rooted in their heresy, which is Reformed theology and sovereign grace and free grace and Calvinism, etc. Now, but what I was, back to what I was saying. So that's why 11 deaths and 17 injured, and why it connects to the inauguration of the Antichrist, Obama. Okay, so we have these 9/11 connections here. We have another one, because the date of the incident, the Deepwater Horizon incident, was exactly 1,091 days to the Boston bombing. And again, Mark Wahlberg starred in both of these movies about these events. So these events connect with 9/11 symbolism, and Mark Wahlberg starred in both of them, the movies about them. Now, God pairs 9 and 23, like I mentioned, and exactly 19 months later, after the Boston bombing, was the explosion at the finish line of a marathon in Virginia. All right, that's another story, a long one. It was in Harrisonburg. It's a long story. One of the reasons why I knew this date in advance, that there would be an explosion on the date, was because of the connections involving Harrison Ford, and so it was absolutely jaw-dropping when what happened was this explosion at the finish line of a marathon in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Now, the reason why it's not exactly 90 months is because the middle date is the date of April 17th. So the manhunt is all about the Boston bombing, and that went to the 19th. And the middle date was the date of the massive explosion in West Texas of the fertilizer factory. I forget how many people it killed. There was a massive explosion, and there's all kinds of things to that too I won't get into. Well, I'll just say this. The Boston bombing and that explosion at the fertilizer plant were both examples of there being these massive drills right at the timing of the actual event that they were drilling for. In other words, it was already scheduled that just a few days after the Boston bombing, that the FBI offices of the East Coast would conduct a drill involving a backpack bomb being placed in a garbage can in a tourist spot in Boston. That was a huge coincidence. Likewise was the case with the explosion in the fertilizer plant in West Texas, because at that time, like literally ongoing at that time, was the largest ever medical emergency disaster drill in North Texas. And it was just like 50 miles away, the hospital. And so in other words, actually, the injured and whatever were brought to that hospital that had been conducting the biggest ever drill in North Texas for this exact event. And God uses these coincidences to confirm the prophetic significance of them. Now, so that's why it's exactly 90 months, because of the middle date of the Boston bombing story, and that date being the date of this West Texas explosion. All right, and so 23 weeks exactly after that was March 20th, 2021. That was the prophetic date that was also expected in advance because of the 23 weeks and other things. And that was the day, among other things, of the 2 explosions at the churches in Indonesia, where the 44th president grew up for 4 years. All right, the number 50 symbolizes the church. The church age began on Pentecost, which literally means 50th day. And this is why God uses 50 weeks exact connections in his signs, but also 50 weeks is 350. And the 350th word in the Greek concordance is the word that means to test. Let me just read it. The 350th word means to examine, to investigate, to question, to judge. I'll read it again. To investigate, examine, and inquire into, scrutinize, sift, question, specifically in a forensic sense of a judge to hold an investigation, to interrogate, examine the accused or witnesses, to judge of, estimate, determine the excellence or defects of any person or thing, as in the church. And so the main theme of God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, and this is why, I figure, the reason why God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is only being explained on this channel is because it is only on this channel where you will learn or hear about the true meaning, the theme, the main theme of God's big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is warning of judgment for the church, which God is very, very displeased with. As Peter said, judgment begins with the church, and God is very, very displeased with the church, but specifically, not those other churches. I'm speaking to the evangelicals now. No. It is the evangelical church, the American evangelical church, and the evangelical churches around the world that respond by the evangelical church. God reproves whom he loves, as he says in the letter to the Church of Laodicea, which is the American evangelical church. The Protestant mainline churches are the Church of Sardis. There are many, including myself, that believe that the 7 churches are not only symbolism for individuals and other things, but also symbolize the 7 stages of church history, the last one being meant for the modern evangelical church, which Jesus said he wants to vomit out of his mouth, and is knocking at the door and is not inside the church. That's a huge wake-up call and condemnation. He is not inside this church. He's knocking at the door, wanting to come in. Why isn't he inside? Well, one reason being is pastors. Jesus forbid pastors. Now I'm getting off subject. What you need to do is, if you are a Christian, quote unquote, arguably the most important video for you on this channel is the 23 church signs video. And I might leave a clip at the end of this video too, but I've just repeated this information so often, and what you need to do anyway is watch the 23 church signs video. So I'll just leave it at that. When the prediction comes to pass, obviously the wise person will take my advice, but also know that they need to watch every minute of every video on this channel. So back to the diagram here. Okay, so it's 50 weeks from the church signs. Okay, the Indonesia, the church bombings in Indonesia, there were 2 of them, and that's because at that same time was the second wettest 2 days of rain in the 4 times 4th state, which connects with other things, but that was also 4 and 4. And again, the 44th president grew up for 4 years in Indonesia. So that pairs with the 23. Now we have the 50 weeks because it's the church we're talking about with the church bombings, the Christian church bombings in Indonesia. And that connects us, and this was expected also in advance because of the 50 weeks and other things. March 13th, 2022, 3 divided by 13 is 0.230, which gives us a 23. It was the day that Tom Brady announced that he would return for a 23rd season in a tweet. And it was also the day that, in a tweet, the 44th president announced that he had the CVD disease and that he was happy to have taken the mark of the Antichrist to supposedly counter the CVD disease. And that was 23 days before he returned to the White House for the first time to promote his nationalized health care, which is how the mark of the Antichrist is and has been and will be enforced. And again, Tom Brady said he would return for a 23rd season, and that was exactly 23 weeks after the regular season game, the most watched of that season, that the media dubbed the Return of the GOAT game, when Tom Brady and the Buccaneers returned to Boston to play his former team. And so that was a bunch of 23s on the state, which confirms this connection because it pairs with 9, as I mentioned, and God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its meaning. These 23s were, on that day also, we had the prophetic explosions, the 12 of them. Tom Brady wore jersey number 12, and on that day we had the 12 explosions of rockets just outside the U.S. consulate in Iraq, and also the explosions at the border with Poland, right on the border where Ukraine is, which was essentially the border with America because Poland is NATO and NATO is America. And the rockets that exploded there were intended for the camp there, which was being used by U.S. Marines to train Ukrainian soldiers. All right. Anyway, these 23s here were 90 plus 90 plus 90 days to this date, which was when player number 99 signed his 9-year contract. Aaron Judge signed with the New York Yankees. The prediction is for dirty bombs and an evacuation in New York City, where Aaron Judge plays. He plays for the Bronx Bombers. All right. And it was also the 9 times 9th anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, in which 2,300 people is it 2,300 people were killed? And that's also a pairing of 9 and 23. 9 times 9 from the years exactly from the Pearl Harbor bombings to the contract of player number 99, 9-year contract. And this date was known in advance as well. And one reason being was this connection. Okay, all of these dates were known in advance. These were all known to be, and all of these dates were at one point thought to be the end of the trail for the dirty bombs, but they ended up being more dates in the trail of signs. I mean, what you're looking at is one of the ultimate examples of a trail of signs. It goes back to, the Deepwater Horizon, really, here. You see what I'm saying? Now, this date here on the 13th of March would have also connected to July 13th, 2019, the day of the Manhattan blackout. But anyway, see, it's a web too. It's not linear. They all interconnect. Well, anyway, this date here involving player number 99 was exactly 9 plus 9 weeks, which is 18 weeks. and 18 is 6 plus 6 plus 6, to this date here, which involved the explosion that killed 18,000 cows. This was the big news, the explosion that killed 18,000 cows after 18 weeks exactly after Aaron Judge in New York City, where the predicted explosions will be. And it was in Texas, and that was the same day as the arrest of the document leaker, who was 21 years old, and his name is Tahera. His last name, his surname, Tahera, rhymes with Texas. The X is in the middle, hint at the mark of the Antichrist, symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. But the name Tahera is it comes from the name of a tree that has a berry, which if you eat one of these small berries, you will die. They're extremely toxic. That's why the tree is named this, Tahera, because it's rooted in the Latin word that means toxic. And so what we are predicting is a toxic, dirty bomb, and we had the explosions and the toxicity symbolism on this date, and it was involved the surprise of who the document leaker was, which was a 21-year-old, and it was 21 days before this sign, which revealed the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, because this arrest was in Massachusetts, and on and on. There's far more than just that to confirm this, but this is a very important thing, which is why you need to watch on this channel the 54th Massachusetts video, which was part of these videos, as like I'm explaining, that led trails of signs to February 3rd, which I mentioned earlier. So I'm not going to update that video. You need to go, and like the other 70 videos, there's just not enough time. There's just too much. God developed these 70 videos of stories. Well, one of the really important ones, I would recommend watching all of them, but one of the really important ones is the 54th Massachusetts Regiment video. And those revelations came around this time when God was pointing to this date 5-4. Okay, now, and on and on. And this date too was now as you can see in this diagram, this was made at the time where this was thought was to be the date, and this date in turn also ended up being a step, and we had the relevant signs, including the IAEA conference and also the explosion of the World War II bomb in Lion City, Singapore, and on, okay? Okay, and that's explained in the other video. So that's just, anyway, I just wanted to give you this Mark Wahlberg, Deepwater Horizon, Patriots Day bombing connections for you. And again, also the Sam Brinton suitcase thief story. The 9/11 actually does in fact connect to the Fukushima, which has, as you could see here, these 9/11 connections on both sides of it. Because the 9/11 was 2.5 years exactly, which set the prophecy regarding the times and a half time in Bible prophecy. Anyway, that gets us to the Spanish 9/11, which was the explosions of the commuter trains in Madrid in northern Spain, which is the location where the terrorists on 9/11 last regrouped and planned their attack. They planned it from and coordinated, got together right before the attack in northern Spain, which is why the Spanish people call it the Spanish 9/11. All right, you get the idea. And that's, well, 7 years is because of the most central prophecy in the Bible regarding this 70th set of 7 years regarding the period of the Antichrist, symbolic of it. And that's 84 months. Barack Obama was born on the date 8/4. And his name Obama is equal to 84 in Hebrew gematria. All right, I think we've done enough with this diagram here. And then I think that is it for this video too. And so make sure you share this video with everyone you know, and don't ever stop sharing it, or at least don't stop sharing one of the videos, whatever one you choose on this channel, and or multiple videos. And also don't just share them in the comments sections of places you typically go. And in other words, don't just preach to the choir. If you are on the red team, also post the comment, or rather a comment and link to one of these videos in places you never go, and do some work, right? You need to do some work. Contrary to saved by faith alone, the only place in the Bible where the phrase saved by faith alone is used is when James said, "For you see, a person is not saved by faith alone, but through his works." And he gives the examples of Abraham and Rahab, who demonstrated their faith through their sacrifice and risk. which is what is required ultimately to actualize one's faith, because faith is an acting, it's a doing, not an intellectual agreement with some sort of doctrine, like Calvinism or Reformed theology. All right, and anyway, watch the 23 church signs video. If you don't believe in what I just said, your eyes will be opened, because there are countless passages basically on every other page or every page in the New Testament and also in the Old Testament contradicts clearly your doctrine if you have the typical evangelical doctrine. Well, that's enough of doctrine and all that. Watch the 23 church signs video. But again, make sure you share this video. There's nothing that compares to this in terms of an evangelism tool. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, "Jesus loves you," unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.